Evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth the Motor City Madmouth, along with the Sarcasm Clown, that is Rick Curdy, and the Stat Clown, Louis Eddie Weiss. And welcome back to the Big Top, guys.
How's it going?
Hey, guys. How are you?
All right. Well, when I bring you two clowns on the show, I never have to worry about losing my voice because you guys get to go ahead and know. I don't know if you guys, Deontay Wilder or whoever else is fighting this weekend, but I'll let you guys duke it out for a few minutes, and you guys can match wits ends. Go for it. Who leads off?
Rick, I'll let you start. Anything pertinent you want to talk about tonight in the world of baseball?
Yeah, Rob Manfred's a coward, and he needs to stop calling the World Series title a piece of metal. And I'm just very, very disappointed in Manfred and the way he's been acting, and to say that the Astros' punishment is shame and all that. It's ridiculous. This story will not go away. It keeps getting worse. The Astros keep putting their foot in their mouth every minute. Manfred keeps is so tone deaf to all this and just thinks it's not a big deal, wants it to go away. But Major League Baseball and the Astros continue with this. So it's just not going away. I wish it would, but it gets worse and worse and worse. What do you think?
All right, well, you ever see the movie The Godfather? And if you say no, I'm going to assume you've never seen a TV screen or been to a movie theater before.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite movies. Godfather 2 is even better.
Yes, we won't get into the third one. But remember the scene, obviously, in the first movie where I believe it's Don Corleone's daughter's wedding, and he comes out and says that, I forget who he's referring to, he's going to make him an offer that he can't refuse, right? I'll just paraphrase on the quote real quick.
Yeah.
I'm coming out and I'm thinking that the punishment's levied on Houston, and this is total conspiracy, me wearing a tinfoil on my head kind of thing. Did Crane possibly pay off, MLB and Manfred to possibly get a far less steep punishment? I don't know. I'm not going to come out and overtly say that's true, but you know what? Maybe Crane went up to Manfred and made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and that's why these punishments are the way they are. Now, I have a question I'm going to pose because I'm going to post something on Twitter later, and I was talking to one of our regular contributors and somebody who works with us on social media about this.
Okay.
And I posed a question, and again, I don't think this is a perfect replacement for Manfred because personally at this point I think the guy needs to go. I think Mr. Gaptooth's run his course over in New York, running the head of baseball as their commissioner. Would Tony Clark, the head of the Players Union, possibly make a better commissioner? And now, again, this is like picking the lesser of two evils. I mean, Tony Clark, very intelligent, articulate guy, but we understand that he was adamantly against, the players getting these suspensions, which, again, didn't happen because of the grievances that would have been filed in the wake of it. But with that said, given that baseball is a sport that doesn't necessarily have the best reputation for marketing its players, would the hiring of somebody like Tony Clark, a former player himself and somebody who heads the Players Union, benefit the sport in regards that he'd find ways to market players that Manfred seems to not know how to do?
Possibly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to give it a shot. First, Manfred needs to resign. I mean, he needs to go, and I like Manfred, and I understand all the kooky ideas he had, and I understand all that make the game faster, but there's no excuse to give cheaters immunity, and then they go around and, like Carlos Correa continuously lies because the commissioner keeps saying, no, that trash can incident, that happened, that's been happening. So, so the Astros just don't get it. So possibly Tony Clark would be a good addition. Maybe someone like someone that's respected and admired, maybe like a Nolan Ryan or, someone else that can run the league, because apparently I think Manfred has just lost total respect. And when you hear people like Mike Trout, of all people, bashing the commissioner and bashing the penalties, or Nick Markakis doing the same thing, real quiet guys that you never hear. And when they're playing about Manfred, it's time for him to go. So give Tony Clark a shot, see what happens.
Scott?
Well, I mean, the only thing that I wondered, I don't think I've ever seen it before. I can't remember the last time a player, per se, or a former player, has ever taken over the big chair of being a commissioner. I understand the logic okay, behind it, I just don't see in many cases whether you have an owner, an executive, a lawyer, and so forth, where they would understand the legal ramifications of how to do it. I understand the idea. I understand this is 2020. No, I'm not referring to my vision, which is anything but, okay, but I just never seen a player with that kind of authority be able to take over, because who knows what you'd probably see. Now, with and again, we haven't seen any precedent of that in other sports, let alone baseball, one of the most conservative sports on the planet.
Yeah, and again, this is a hypothetical. I'm not necessarily saying it should happen, but it's just the question of whether somebody who heads the players' union and works to benefit them getting the salaries that they want, or the big contracts that they desire in conjunction with their agents, would that benefit the sport in any way? Because you'd have somebody who was a player and and now has worked in the corporate world of baseball and sees kind of like the ins and outs of the day-to-day operations. It's just a hypothetical. Again, I'm not saying I think it should happen, but at the end of the day, I kind of feel bad for Manfred. I mean, again, I think he's handled this about as well as
He's a coward.
I know.
He's a coward.
Oh no! Listen, Rudy. I only feel bad
Rudy.
for him. I'm sorry. Rick.
Now we got a real coward. He's calling you Rudy. Rudy's got a different name here. We're talking about Rick Purdy, not Rudy. Yeah,
But anyway,
he's got his arms mixed up.
So I feel bad for Manfred in the sense of, he hasn't handled this scandal at all well. I mean, he's handled it terribly. If he wrote a paper on how he handled the scandal, I'd give him a big fat F, and I'd give him a plus to the end of the moon with how horribly that he's handled this thing. But at the end of it, it's like giving players immunity. It's like if I murder somebody, am I gonna get immunity because I admitted to it? No. I mean, you're still going to jail for life, and at the end of the day, if you do what these players did, you still deserve to be subject to very gruesome fines and possibly even a ban from the sport altogether. That's why I think, man,
at least they should be suspended for a year and just vacate the championship and just don't give them a chance, because it was fraud what they committed. This was absolute fraud. This is worse than this is like the 1919 Black Sox.
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
And the double.
And look what happened to them. They got banished, and not only did they get banned, players like Chiller Joe Jackson didn't even take any money, but just because they knew about it, they're gone for the rest of the game, and that's all he's going to be remembered for. And little, Jose Altuve and Big Mouth Correa, they need to just go away, because these idiots, and I'm being kind about it, these idiots, they need to go. And Manfred needs to go if you give these idiots immunity. I mean, it's just shameful. And he has lost all respect from the league. He's lost respect from the players, and they're probably going to just tell him, you need to go away.
Yeah,
they need to bring someone like a Cal Ripken Jr. to be the commissioner, someone who's respected and beloved, and just make a press conference, say, you know what, we're not going to tolerate what the Astros did, and just punish them, and just do what he needs to do, and now bring respectability to the game, because right now the game, there's no respectability right now, because they're like saying, yeah, we can do whatever we want, and we have an idiot commissioner who's so tone deaf that he calls the World Series trophy a piece of metal, and it's just like, man, what is going on? I mean, it sounds like they paid him off here. Maybe one of your conspiracy theories is true. I mean, he's just so tone deaf to it, and I mean, it would be like a commissioner. It'd be like Adam Silver calling the trophy, yeah, it's some championship, yeah, whatever. It's just it doesn't make any sense. So Manfred just needs to go. It's just obvious.
You know what, Curdy? For all the sarcasm you do throw out there a lot, and you do an awful lot of it, every now and then you do get one right. And thinking that Cal Ripken, I know you are. Well, we know that. That's a foregone conclusion here. But the fact of the matter is, you bring up Cal Ripken. He would actually be the closest thing as a player that I could actually believe that would look credible as a commissioner. So, Curdy, I realize that you're very limited in your journalism skills, and we don't count on you being a Charlotte Bats, executive to think that you can be journalistically known for anything. But every now and then, even a blind squirrel comes up with one, and you got this one right, my man. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
I mean, it's like, or you can get maybe a Derek Jeter or something.
Well, no,
he's
Derek
running
Jeter.
the team right now.
Yeah, I don't think about Derek Jeter. Don't quit while you're ahead, Curdy. Okay, Cal Ripken. Okay, I think is a better choice, because Derek Jeter has his own mess to take care of down in Miami.
He's doing a pretty good job with that mess, though.
But we're not. Wait a minute. Don't get off subject here. You got to leave David Levin into this.
10,000 a game.
Yeah, I mean, come on. You're on a roll. Both of you two clowns are on a roll. Oh, hold on. I mean, this for journalism here. It does happen once in a while. Might be onto something here with Cal Ripken being a potential guy that I think could come in. But you know what, guys? Don't hold your breath. Go ahead, Lewis.
All right, well, last thing I'll say before we move on to the next topic, because if I have to hear the word Astro one more time, I mean, I just heard a Little League team come out and say they're not going to use the name in their respective league anymore because of the connotations associated with it. Absolutely. Well, the last thing I'll say is that Manfred is setting an incredible double standard here with the way that he's kind of handled this. I mean, Bart Giamatti's rolling around in his grave right now, and Kennesaw Mountain Landis is doing cartwheels in hell or wherever he is, if he's seeing what's going on. All right, so again, we're gonna take the Astros. We're gonna put it 6 feet under. We're gonna bury it for now until maybe next weekend if we have to talk about it again, or maybe whenever the next time we're on here. So I'm gonna move on to a team that was directly affected by the Astros in 2017, and that's the New York Yankees. And I'm not sure you heard a couple weeks ago, Rick, but James Paxton, their left-handed starting pitcher, who came up big for them in a couple of games in the postseason, had a pretty solid year. First year in New York, shut down. He had back surgery to repair something in the spine, and now it comes out today that Luis Severino, who only pitched 12 innings in the regular season last year, given elbow shortness and a lat strain, is shut down for a couple of weeks because of loose bodies and his throwing elbow. On a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you? I mean, personally for me, I'd give it a 6 because now when you look at their projected rotation, you have guys like Garrett Cole's obviously going to be your ace. You have Jay Happ, Masahiro Tanaka will be solid for you. He'll be at a slightly above average starter in the major leagues. And then you're going to have to, work the opener again, maybe with a guy like Chad Green, and kind of come up with some other things in the rotation. But yet, Severino, now this is 3 years in a row he's battled injuries. He's yet to throw 200 innings in a season. The 2 seasons when he's gotten close, it's 190 plus. But he's a big part of that team, and I think really if the Yankees want to win the World Series, Garrett Cole's an ace, and that helps. But Severino's got just as good a stuff as Garrett Cole. And, a healthy Severino and a healthy Garrett Cole together, that's like Schilling and Randy Johnson 2.0. Again, I give this a 6, but between the two of you guys, how concerned are you now that the Yankees could possibly lose another big-name starting pitcher as the season is drawing upon us?
I don't know. Let me start off, Rick. I'll become concerned when we're talking May or June. Right now, here in the month of March, I'm not going to really worry about
February, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Well, yeah, that's right. February does come before March. At last I looked at the calendar, but the way this year is going by fast would make a lick of difference. But to answer your question, okay, when we start talking April, May, then I'll start worrying. Right now, I'm not worried about it because the manager can do whatever he wants to control how much work he gets during spring training. So for me, concerned, not much. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, I don't know about Garrett Cole being this great ace. Remember, there's a player named Chuck Knobloch.
Yeah, hit Keith Olbermann's mom in the head.
Highly touted, went to the New York Yankees and absolutely choked.
Defensively,
yeah, and we've had several players who go to the Yankees. Another name comes to mind, Sonny Gray. What happened to Sonny Gray? He was this great pitcher for the
right.
A's.
Good example.
Went to New York and Garrett Cole. I don't know, man. I have friends who are Yankee fans. They think they're gonna win all the World Series and all in a row and all that stuff. I'm not sold on Garrett Cole. I think he's gonna be a big fat lemon. I think he's gonna choke under pressure, and I just don't see it happening with him. I just think he's gonna be another Chuck Knobloch, another Sonny Gray, another a guy that goes into the big. Remember Bobby Bonilla when he went back to New York and
still getting paid.
And he's still getting paid because that's an idiocy of an organization. So I don't see it. So we'll see what happens with Garrett. I'm just not sold on him. And to sign for, what was it, a 10-year contract?
9 for $324.
Yeah, and all this guaranteed money he's getting. I mean, what is up with all these long contracts? Like they gave one to Pujols, and now they're doing these 9-year deals with it. Bryce Harper got a 13-year deal with no trade clause. It's like, how stupid can you be?
I mean,
give him all this money for all these years, and we all know Bryce Harper is not going to achieve what he's going to achieve in Philadelphia because he's a spoiled, entitled millennial that thinks he's the greatest thing in the world. And the Phillies are not going to win with it. Look at the Nationals; they won the World Series without this guy.
Right,
so
that's a good point.
He must not be too valuable, in my opinion. So. I just don't understand why they're doing these long contracts. 5-year deals, give them 5 years, and if they don't do nothing, hit the road, Jack. Get out of here. Don't come back no more.
Right, Charles. But try telling that to the player, though. That's the problem, though. I mean, the Yankees weren't going to win. Cashman's philosophy was, and he came out and said this, if we have to overpay a little bit and go over our luxury tax to get that ace that we were deprived of and kind of what prevented us from going to the World Series in 2019, then you do it. I don't think he'll be a bust. I mean, you can make a laundry list of names of players who've gone to the Yankees and they didn't do what everyone said they were going to do. Randy Johnson, don't come in contact with any reporters and throw cameras on the ground in Times Square, or maybe even Kenny Rogers. I mean, there's so many names, like you said, Knobloch, even Jason Giambi at one point.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Cole, look at Judge. Judge can't even. I mean, he can't even stay healthy.
Yeah, Stanton too. Stanton's a walking piece of glass. But again, they're just great players when they're on the field. But at the end of the day, I think there's something about putting on those pinstripes that elevates even the most below average to league average players. Look at Mike Tauchman coming over from Colorado and doing what he did. Gio Urshela essentially entrenched himself at third base in New York City until Miguel Andujar says otherwise with his poor throwing arm. But again, enough on the Yankees for now. We'll move on to something else real quick. So, well, you know what? Let's even stay on the Yankees. I'm sorry, we were just talking about Aaron Judge. Why don't we talk about the fact that he's also not swinging a bat early in spring training due to shoulder soreness? Look, this Yankee team is great, and I'm really excited as an objective baseball fan to see what they're going to do this year because the potential, I mean, Pacoda, I believe, has them to win 103 games. Like, this is a really good team on paper. I mean, if you look at that team overall, you got Brett Gardner as a fourth outfielder who had one of the better seasons of his career last year. Really bought into launch angle, hit a career high 28 home runs. Stan, if he's healthy, he's going to be a great defender, and he's going to hit for a lot of power. Yeah, you still have 7 years of him, in New York, but at the end of the day, I mean, like a healthy Giancarlo Stanton will be in 30 of 30 starting MLB lineups. I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. But with Judge, I think, who is the face of their franchise, even though he's not even the highest paid player, how concerned are you about him? I mean, I think he drive on more than one aspect of the ball. Good base runner. He's a good defender. Excellent defender in right field. I believe Mookie Betts is the only defender who has more defensive runs saved in the last 3 years than Aaron Judge. And then the fact that, you're going to miss a lot of power if he's hurt. But if he is out for an extended period of time, how concerned are you for the Yankees' chances in what looks to be a pretty good American League East?
I'm not very hyped up on the Yankees to begin with. Aaron Boone's the problem. They never should have hired him as a manager. I think he's the weak link in all this. Their pitching is, now they're getting hurt. Their pitching, to me, wasn't all that great. And you got two guys who are exactly the same, who are like, they're Dave Kingman. They hit home runs, but they have like a 220 batting average and have 200 strikeouts. And so it's like home runs or strikeout with these two guys, and they're like mirror images of each other. They're both the same height. They both play the same way, and I'm not really sold on the Yankees. I think they're overrated. I just don't see it happening with them because they can't even stay healthy. And Boone is just, like I said, I think he's the weak link. They never should have got rid of Girardi. That was the biggest mistake they made.
Yeah.
Or they should have gone after a Madden, or they should have gone after somebody else, or Buck Showalter could bring him back. But I just think the Yankees are so full of themselves and just think that any idiot can manage them. And like I said, the Aaron Boone thing's still a head scratcher to me. And it's all about staying healthy, and they don't look very healthy right now. And we'll see what happens. And why Derek Cole still pitches beyond me. He's part of the cheating Astros organization. You're going to tell me that nobody from the Astros knew about what's going on? They all knew what was going on.
He wasn't on that World Series team.
Every single person knew about what's going on. And so for them to say, we had no idea, so you're going to be on that team for 3 years, and you had no idea that Carlos Beltran and Cora never came up to you and talked about cheating.
Well, he wasn't on that World Series winning team.
Give me a break. So this guy shouldn't even be playing, let alone getting all this ridiculous amount of money and playing for the New York Yankees. So I got a massive problem with him being there. So that's my 2 cents. And you know how I am. I'm very, very shy.
Yeah, I can hardly tell. One thing about your 2 cents that makes a whole lot of sense is the fact that I agree with you guys that Joe Girardi should never have been let go in the first place. So, yeah, that one kind of – and he did win a world championship, and he had the team playing real well until they dismissed him. Maybe they thought after a lot of years as manager they decided to get a new voice, but for some reason that was a change I personally don't think should have been made.
He came out and said when he was fired, and not a lot of people talk about this, and you watch, like if you were to watch a Yankees game in August of 2017, they went to the playoffs, they won 97 games that year. There were questions
that was the best year ever.
They weren't
even expected to do anything, and look at how good they were.
Your favorite player, Aaron Judge, should have won the MVP that year, but a little short hobbit in Houston won it anyway. But
yeah.
despite that, what I'm trying to say is, when you watch those games, even despite the fact that the Yankees were winning, Girardi and he maneuvers a team better than any team I see. He took a Marlins team in 2006 that looked like they were going to go 1-161, and he won a Manager of the Year and he won 78 games. Now I know it's not above 500, but it's making most of what you have. You can take chicken stock and make chicken salad, is what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, people saw Girardi and said, like, I don't think he really enjoys the New York media. He knows how to handle it. He's just so disillusioned with it. I mean, look, Alex Rodriguez gave him a big headache for a few years near the end there. And you know what? I think he just needed a year off, and he'll benefit from Philly. He knows New York, so I don't think Philly's going to be that difficult for him to navigate. Perfect manager for Bryce Harper. I don't agree with what you said about Harper being a prima donna. I think he's kind of matured beyond that. He's 20.
He's a joke. He's a complete joke.
He's 27 years old, and he's still he's still a fantastic player. I mean, again, I'm not going to say
Mike Trout anytime.
Oh yeah, nobody's going to argue that. I'd rather
and blindfolded over this idiot.
I'd rather have chicken breast than canned chicken, but at the end of the day, they're going to give you nutrients. It doesn't matter. I think.
I'm surprised his big fat head fits in the ballpark because his ego is so ridiculous. And hopefully, with the Nationals winning the World Series, maybe he can look in the mirror and say, you know what? Maybe I'm not this great after all. Maybe it humbled him.
Well, one player doesn't make a team.
Boy, they can win without me. So maybe he'll come in with a different attitude. He's married now. He's got a baby. I hope he's matured. He just needs to stop acting like a jerk.
But he handled that first year in Philadelphia so well, though.
He needs to stop flicking off the umpires and grow up. And him and Trout are like around the same age. Look at how he handles himself. That's why I was surprised to hear, and I'm glad Mike Trout did something about the commission. I'm happy he called them out. And
Harper did too. I know you love Bryce Harper. He did too. Look,
but Bryce Harper, man, he just needs to grow up, man. He needs to stop acting like such a punk, you know.
I mean, you can say what you want about his personality, but he's not as bad as he was before. And me and Scott have talked about this ad nauseum. We spoke with Scott's mentor, Tony DeMarco, and the three of us came to the agreement that we like Bryce Harper. We understand maturity was a problem early on in his career, and he's really not that same kind of player anymore.
Well, you say like him, but to be honest with you, I can't stand him either, because I hate to tell you this, not that I'm trying to pile on you, but hear me out, okay? Now that you've got my name into this conversation.
He's a title.
Well, first of all, you know what? To me, to compare Mike Trout and Bryce Harper is like comparing a black and white TV versus a color TV. It's just not the same argument here. I don't like Bryce Harper. Curdy's right about Rendon, winning it, and Bryce Harper doesn't have a ring. Now, whether he gets one in Philadelphia, whether he gets booed like Santa Claus in the city of brotherly hate is another story. But, hey, listen, these contracts, as big as they are, what they are, but, what can I tell you? But meanwhile, you two clowns you guys are living up to exactly what I expected. Stat Clown and the Sarcasm Clown. I was waiting for the Bryce Harper thing to equal the intensity of the Clayton Kershaw, and boy, you two clowns definitely lived up to your reputation.
I can't stand Bryce Harper. I cannot stand that man. He's a poster child for spoiled, entitled young people. No offense, Lewis. But that's why people don't like young people, because of people like Bryce Harper that feel so entitled and feel like it's all about me, and if I don't get my way, I'm going to yell, scream, flick you off, be verbally abusive to you. Look at what happened with the Nationals. I remember when he got kicked out of a game, and the team won with a game-winning home run. He runs out to the field, and what is the first thing he does? He doesn't congratulate his teammates. He goes and finds the umpire and flicks him off. And what happened to him? Nothing. He got suspended for running off the field. He didn't even get suspended for flicking off the umpires. That's a joke.
That's more I think that's more at Major League Baseball. For that, I agree that's wrong with what Harper did. But he also if you really look at his first year in Philadelphia, he handled it about as well as he could. He struggled, but he still, he handled the media about as well as he could.
All right, we'll put a halt on that debate, okay? So, Kurt, you got 30 seconds to promote where you're from. I know you're with the Charlotte Bats. How do people get a hold of you on social media, Rick?
You can contact me at charlottebatsbaseball@gmail.com. Check out our website at charlottebats, www.charlottebats.com. We're also on Twitter at charlottebatsbaseball, and we're also on Instagram at charlottebats. and also the Charlotte Bats for our Facebook page. And you just post anything on there and tell me what you think of me, whether you like me or not. Hey, you know what? I just tell people the truth, and I don't tell people what they want to hear.
All right, with that said, to be continued at a later date, the Stat Clown versus the Sarcasm Clown, living up to their normally weekly billing. All right, Rick, thank you very much for being on the program, and we look forward to future battles between you two clowns, because I think you guys are really good clowns. All right, take care, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye, Rick.
Well, you really rattled your chain about Harper, didn't he?
I mean, look, I'm not going to disagree with him about everything.
Oh, sure not. He got you like he got Kershaw. Let's not kid yourself. But, it's okay.
But Kershaw ain't spoiled, though. You can never say Clayton
Well,
Kershaw.
no, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
I'm not going there in terms of Clayton being cursed. But with all due respect, Harper isn't one of my favorite people. He isn't. But you guys do make a lot of valid points. But, I don't care what anybody talks about in terms of cheating and all this other stuff and who belongs where. I think the only pitcher on that Astros roster that could really handle New York, even though he's not on there, is Justin Verlander.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Verlander, to me, has ice in his veins, and he can handle a lot of different places. But Cole's there. He was available. He's at the Yankees, and I'm not a big fan anyways whatsoever of these long-term 10, 12, 13-year deals, because most of them are good at the beginning, but on the back end are the worst deals on the planet. So
yeah, and then a lot of general managers have said that. Dan O'Dowd, who works for MLB Network, kind of came out and said that's what he kind of looked for when he extended Troy Tulowitzki, that you knew he was going to be productive in the beginning, but given the extensive injury history, you kind of just figured that something was going to break at some point. And look, Cole, correct Curdy, I didn't get a chance to because he was screaming like a banshee. Cole wasn't on that 17 team, so you can't really implicate him. I understand they cheated, but I'm not going to really put too much on him, even though they said it carried on, because it's a position player-derived scheme, and he was a pitcher. So.
No, he wasn't on that team, but when you're on a team with that climate, then you understand the idiosyncrasies of what's going on in the clubhouse, knowing that there's a lot of tension going on. So, albeit he doesn't have the ring to show for it, but being with the Astros, he's still tied to the stigma of being on a franchise,
Absolutely.
which unfortunately
and there's no
is
argument
tainted there.
Yeah,
so,
but again, we also have to remember he was traded there, so he didn't ask for that.
All right, with that said, we bring our next guest. He wears multiple titles, David Levin. And David, welcome back to the Sports Exchange. You're on with Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and Louis Adio Weiss.
Well, hi, guys. How y'all doing?
All right, how are you doing?
I feel like I was just here. It's amazing how that happens.
Oh, my goodness. I'll tell you, you get around real quick, especially as we do things mobile. So,
that's the theory to it all. How's everybody doing tonight? Just want to talk a little baseball?
Yeah, we're going to talk some of a team that you cover for Marlins Maniac and the aptly named Miami Marlins. So I have a couple of questions for you.
Well, the energy level's high. Let's see if you can go ahead and match the first part of the show with Rick Curdy. Then again, not too many people match his intensity, but you do match it with intelligence, and you do match it with a lot of information. I don't know which two will lead off, but go ahead.
David, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and this is one more about you than it is about the team that I've kind of rooted for since I was about 6-7 years old. So you cover. Everybody knows that listens to the Sports Exchange and follows you on Twitter that you cover the Jacksonville Jaguars. You live in that area, but then more people should know, because obviously we agree that baseball is a beautiful game, is that you also cover the Marlins for Marlins Maniac. Now, I want to ask you this, because this is the first thing I thought about when I heard that I was going to be talking to you tonight, and that's, how often do you come down to South Florida to cover games in Miami during the season? And why don't you give a little explanation of what your travel schedule is like when you do come down and do some of those events, if you do them during the year?
Okay, well, first of all, hi, Louis. How are you doing? It's good to talk to you again.
What's going on, Dave?
Second of all, I have not been down to cover the Marlins themselves.
Okay.
I guess you would say my background is Maine. I've been covering a lot of the minor league teams, all four levels, especially here in Jacksonville with the Jumbo Shrimp, which is the Double A affiliate.
Yeah.
But my plan is to be able to get down more to South Florida to take in more games and to follow all facets that go on with the Marlins this year. The good thing about doing the minor league circuit, if you want to call it, is that those hitters that are there right now in Jupiter, I watch them at double, single, triple A, and watch them build, especially top prospects. Sanchez, Cabrera, Nieder, watched them all pitch in Jacksonville, and they're pretty darn exciting.
Yeah, Sixto looks really good to watch. I'm really looking forward to him.
It's pretty exciting stuff. I don't think it's a better. I like what I do. I cover the Jaguars and I cover the baseball, but I think I have probably one of the best jobs in the world because I get to do this for a living, and they pay me.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is that I get to see these guys before they're even, a major league star. So I kind of get to say I knew them when, that type of thing. I'll give you something to think about, Lewis. When I was a kid and I grew up in South Florida, first since for about 6 or 7 years I was in Miami. And Scott will know this. And my dad took me to the old baseball park in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh yeah, Fort Lauderdale. I actually used to cover the Fort Lauderdale Yankees back in the day.
Okay, well when they were the Orioles.
Right.
I mean, this is like early. And this 18-year-old stick figure of a kid named Cal Ripken who was playing baseball down there for the Fort Lauderdale Orioles.
Well, that was actually the Miami Orioles over at the Miami Stadium. Unless I can't remember, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I was a little one.
Okay.
7, 8 years old watching, and that's how my love for baseball started,
right.
Especially the minor leagues, because he was Cal Ripken, and then he broke out and he was great and all this stuff, and that's really how my baseball love starts. I like baseball actually more than football, believe it or not. Because there's a purity, and I think both of you will appreciate this. Maybe Scott will appreciate it a little bit more because we have seen more of it.
Right.
There's an appreciation for sitting in a ballpark and watching a pitcher and a hitter go one-on-one.
Oh, yeah.
You can watch everything that goes around. You can watch a football game on TV and still get the same feeling. It's a different type of experience, I guess you would call it. I'm sure that Scott could agree on that.
Well, number one, I was brought up at Tiger Stadium in Detroit. The stadium you're referring to is a Miami Stadium, not far from the Orange Bowl. But yeah, that's where the Ripkens made their mark, and Miami had a good history back then. In fact, I'll even go back and do a little name dropping, and maybe you've heard the names. Larry Bluestein and Sonny Hirsch used to be on the executives, so I know them well. We'll bring them up another time, but I do understand the familiarity with Miami baseball, and I covered the Fort Lauderdale Yankees back in the day when Stump Merrill and Barry Foote and a few other ones there. So continue on, though, David.
So the best thing about, and I don't know how much you guys want to do Q&A and whatnot, but the Marlins are a team to watch this year. I don't necessarily think they're going to be a team that's going to compete for.
No, they're sitting in the cellar this year, man. They're sitting in the cellar this year, but I think there's room for improvement. I'm glad you mentioned that because that actually leads me to the first pertinent question about them, and that's what you expect in 2020. Look, Joel Sherman was on MLB Network about a month ago after they signed Corey Dickerson and said, if you want to get better, sign decent players and get better. And I think that's what they did when they brought in guys like Matt Joyce, who I think is a great fourth outfield option, good on base guy, decent power, plays some solid corner outfield off the bench. Brandon Kinsler is a nice one-year prove-it deal out of the bullpen. Getting Aguiar and Jonathan Villar in trades with Tampa and Baltimore. I think they've made so many smart, under-the-radar moves that will benefit them, and even if those guys don't spend all year in Miami, you can get somewhat of a return for them in terms of minor league prospects that, while they might not be stars because you're bringing in guys who are kind of like C+ and B- level names, you're still bringing in quality players that are going to at least give fans some incentive to go out to the ballpark, and I think that makes them, a 70-win team in 2020.
I thought they would win somewhere between 65 and 70 last year, and I'm going to say somewhere between 70 and 75 this year, and I'm going to hold to that. But I could conceivably see them get up to maybe 78 and challenge. And the reason why I say that is because I think that, first of all, nobody's expecting it, and I know that sounds really weird, but there's this thing called Novocaine, and I firmly believe in this. There are players who get to the majors or get to the NFL or get to whatever sport, and they don't know what to do. And because they don't know what to do, they just do what they normally would do. I think this is a team that has enough depth in its minor league system, and you're right, they made a lot of solid, under-the-radar moves that didn't move the needle as far as breaking the bank or anything like that. But Villar is somebody who can hit 25 to 30 home runs. Aguilar is somebody who can hit 25 to 30 home runs. They have power in Brian Anderson, who's coming back
Love
from
him.
thumb injury, and I think he's a 30 home run hitter. If Garrett Cooper could ever stay healthy, he's a 30 home run hitter.
Yeah.
And Monte Harrison, hopefully, I'm hoping by the time that we get to the All-Star break, is somewhere in the outfield. I don't know where yet, but it's conceivable he could be in right field, and Andy will be at third base.
Yeah, I mean,
the team really could surprise people.
I love Brian Anderson, and I'm so glad you mentioned him. I think now being a Miami resident or a Florida resident and having them as your team to root for by regionality. I mean, he's such a a good story. He says all the right things. He's a plus defender at two positions. I mean, you watch him play third base, and you're like, this guy could win a Gold Glove there. You put him out in right field, and his arm is getting better every year. I've seen him in the 2 full years that he's played. And the on-base percentage is going up. Then you also have to mention the fact that he's playing on AstroTurf this year. They're bringing in the fences. They're really trying to put more offense into that ballpark because it's a pitcher's park. You can check Baseball Reference's park factors to really kind of verify that. But I mean, you know what? I don't love the AstroTurf, but I love the fact that we may have a little bit more offense in that ballpark, and I really do love having. I think Brian Anderson, if the Marlins are smart now, and they really don't have any major payroll obligations besides the crumbs of what they're paying for Stanton's contract over in New York. Brian Anderson is the first guy that I say, if he gets out to a hot start this year, I'm approaching him with a 6 or a 7 year extension, and that's going to buy out a couple of years of free agency because he's 26 now, I believe. He'll be 33 if that deal were to ever happen. He's a solid player with the power, with the defense, with the improving plate discipline, the lowering of the strikeout rate. I just like everything about him. He's not Dave Winfield, but he's just overall, I don't see many overt flaws with his game on the field.
I'll tell you when I started covering the Jumbo Shrimp, which were back then the Jacksonville Suns,
yeah,
where they changed the nickname and they changed ownership. Brian Anderson was a wet behind the ears kid who was just brought up from Jupiter, and he's this 6'3", lanky, all arms, all legs, and he's at third base. I believe he started at second base.
Mm-hmm. He did, yeah.
College. They moved him over to third base, and he is having issue upon issue upon issue trying to ground the ball, pick up ground balls and whatnot. I'm watching him in practice, and I'm leaning in, and this guy sitting next to me goes, "Who is this crumb? He's never going to make it." And then in his second at bat, he launches one out of the stadium, and if you have Scott knows what I'm talking about. It's in the parking lot shared with the Jaguars.
Right.
So you've got the stadium, and then you've got the backdrop, and then you've got the baseball field.
Right.
He launched that ball out of the stadium, and everybody just watching it and whistling, going, "Oh my gosh!" He's got a natural swing.
Mm-hmm.
He's learning to hit for average.
Yeah.
He's good defensively at both places. Scott, am I wrong in saying he could be a Larry Walker type of player?
No, you're dead accurate there. You really are. And I'm very familiar with the power numbers that you're talking about based on the proximity of the two stadiums for sure.
Yeah, it's just he's the guy you want to build around. And granted, the names that you mentioned, Lewis, those are bigger names. People know who they are. Mm-hmm. They don't know who Anderson is yet, and maybe he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit because this is the first year under Derek Jeter's watch. They were active in free agency, and they added instead of subtracted.
Mm-hmm.
I really would have liked to have seen Starlin Castro stay, but I understand it.
The Nationals are smart to give him a 2-year deal.
Yeah, I know. It works for both. I mean, it works for both the player and the team. But Anderson's the guy you want to build around, definitely, at least the position players. On the pitching staff, there are so many good arms that are coming up. I got, like I said, last year I got to see Sixto Sanchez, Edward Cabrera, and Jorge.
Nick Nider, I believe who they got from San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Or Seattle,
pitch
sorry.
back to back, which was quite impressive in how they all throw with power, but they all have a different release, they have a different windup, and they have different location. And Derek Jeter and Michael Hill and Dick Scott and everybody in the front office did exactly what they wanted to do. They started building with pitching because pitchers take a while to develop. He made it a process. I know that for years the Marlins had one of the worst minor league systems in baseball, and you can thank Jeffrey Loria
right.
For that because they kept on trading players away. the Paddock kid in San Diego was with the Marlins.
Oh my God.
German from
The Yankees.
The Yankees
Yeah.
was a prospect.
Even Trevor Richards with the Pirates. I mean, like
Yes.
they have I saw a tweet about a year ago. They have a rotation full of like at least like 1, 2, and at worst 3, 4 starters, like 1 through 5 that they traded away. Paddock was one of the stupidest trades they ever made. They traded him and Josh Naylor. You're not gonna miss him, but I mean Paddock has the potential to be the best pitcher in baseball with just the fastball and the advanced breaking ball, and then the changeup that's
the
almost
the breaking ball is sick.
yeah.
It is a sick pitch. What I think that is good about this too, and you'll agree, is that at every level, whether it's in Clinton or Jupiter at single A or Jacksonville at double A or Wichita, which is the new affiliate in triple A. I'm really sad to see New Orleans go because that's a great ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
I used to go there a lot to go watch. But at every level, there is a pitcher, 2, 3 that you can look at and say, this team is going to be loaded.
Yeah.
And what do you do with them? You trade them away for power hitters. You trade them away for relievers. You trade them away for a solid closer. And that's exactly what Jeter wanted to do. And nobody in Miami believed him. But guess what?
It's working. Project Wolverine.
He knows what the hell he's doing.
Right. Wow. Well, I'll just say this. Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. It makes me hungry thinking about the name.
Yeah.
I'll
Food's
say,
good too.
oh, I bet it is.
I'll tell you that.
And I'm trying to not think about it, but Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. Now, getting back to Derek Jeter, if I may, guys, okay?
Go ahead, yeah.
Everybody knows that Derek Jeter watched the Yankees build from within, and all he's doing is just applying his principles in Miami, and he did inherit a complete mess. So I do believe, in my mind, that Derek Jeter will do a fine job in Miami. Whether he gets the fans to support that team, considering that baseball stadium is the most beautiful stadiums in the world in the wrong location, is the zillion-dollar question. So we got another 4 or 5 minutes to go in the broadcast. Lewis, what do you want to ask?
So we're talking about pitching, and I love pitching because that's what I did in high school and when I played summer ball. And I want to talk about somebody on the major league roster who you got a chance to watch over 2018 and 19, and that's Caleb Smith. First half of the year, I was looking at him and thinking, like, for right now, I mean, other than Sandy Alcantara, who was a bit inconsistent as well, Caleb Smith was looking like a piece that would be there when we were competitive in a couple of years. And I'll give you the numbers real quick, David, just some basic numbers for Caleb Smith. First 18 starts in 2019 at 3.35 ERA. That's pretty good. You make an all-star team, get some little 8th place Cy Young votes for that. Limiting opponents to a 197 opponent batting average. That's great. That means they're not putting bat to ball. I believe he allowed only like 72 hits in like 108 plus innings or 103 plus innings. But then you look at his last 10 starts, and it's like Jekyll and Hyde. A 6.84 ERA. The opponent batting average is 271, and they're slugging 550 against him. He also led the majors in home runs. I believe he gave up 33 home runs, most of the National League in 2019. What do you think changed in the second half compared to his first half? Because in the first half, he looked like one of the better pitchers in the National League.
Right. The first half, he was smoking, and he was everybody's darling. And by the way, Caleb Smith and Garrett Cooper were the part of the first trade that
with the Yankees
Jeter made. They got him from the Yankees for international money and a pitcher by the last name of King, and everybody was like, "What is this?" That might go down as one of the singular best trades he's made in the history of this franchise. While he's as a CEO. What happened to Caleb was simple. He got a hip flexor, a hip injury, and I don't think he fully recovered from it. I know that he was there in Jacksonville for two rehab assignments.
Mm-hmm.
The first rehab assignment, it was pretty bad, and then we all watched through it, and I kind of grimaced, and some of us in the press box were grimacing too because it wasn't Caleb Smith. It's a guy rehabbing a hip injury, hoping that he's going to come back and play baseball.
Yeah.
They kept him there for an extra week, and I know for a fact Caleb was ticked off about the fact that he didn't go back to the majors beforehand, but he wasn't ready. I don't know if he fully recovered from it, and I also know that when he came back, especially in that second game, his delivery was different, and I don't know if he ever recovered from that.
Yeah, when I watched him, because, I try to watch as many Marlins games as I can, it looked like he was coming open a lot. I believe he's a right-handed pitcher, So he was falling off the side a lot. I mean, the numbers reflect that he's got a career ERA plus of 89, and I don't know how in tune you are with the analytics, David, but 100 is like the baseline league average. So for parts of the first 3 years of his career, he's been below league average. I think 2020 is kind of like make or break for him with this team. Or,
All right, so
when he would go to his full windup, he would kick out too far, too. Almost like he was trying to avoid tight and release because he was worried about the hip. And I think that had something to do with it. I will tell you that I believe that both he and Alcantara will win somewhere between 15 and 18 games each this year.
I hope so. I love Alcantara. I mean, he led the National League in shutouts this year. And I mean, he reminds me a lot of what we had with Henderson Alvarez. Power sinker, but I think there's a little bit more in there. I think Alcantara's got a chance to be.
He has more of a it's fastball, it's sinker, but he reminds me a little bit like of Pedro in the way of his release.
Mm-hmm.
And although he's a big, Pedro was 5'11", he's 6'5", and he's 165, and he's all arms and legs. But when he lets go, it's reminiscent of Pedro. So, the same way that Sixto Sanchez has that bulldog mentality with his fastball, that he's untouchable if he's got it working for him. Both of those pitchers are definitely aces. This pitching staff is going to be loaded.
All right.
5 years.
Let me say a couple things. I was at the Henderson Alvarez no-hitter when it occurred against the Detroit Tigers. Not proud of it, but being a part of history on the wrong end of it doesn't make things any easier. Although I got to admit, though, it's the first no-hitter I've ever seen in person, and it happened to be in this area. So do you two have any final thoughts before we wrap up the broadcast? Go ahead. 2023,
David, three of us want to chip in on some World Series tickets down in Miami?
Listen, John Smoltz said that somewhere between now and 2025, the Marlins would win the World Series, and by God, I believe it.
Yeah, I'm like, I haven't been this excited as a Marlins fan, and I feel bad saying the word fan as somebody who writes sports for a living.
Right.
But just as somebody in this area to actually have that excitement, I mean, the Heat are playing well, and I think that helps a little bit. And the Dolphins are doing whatever they're doing. You know what? Like, baseball's my game, and to see a competitive Marlins team, for me to actually wake up and say, like, I live simultaneously with the Marlins in the postseason in my adult life, and I can actually recall it because I was like 7 when they won in 03. Pretty special. I don't know how many times I'll get a chance to say that.
Stop right. You were 7. Stop right
All
now.
right. Well, here, let me add a little something to this conversation. I was there when Pudge Rodriguez at the Giants game.
JT Snow at the
play. Whatever. I was there when that play took place, so I got both of you clowns licked here, and I like to call Levin a clown, even though he's not as bad as one. So, but no, with all due respect, that was a nice piece of history there.
And by the way, Lewis aged us considerably because he was 7.
Thank you. I
was a little kid.
Yeah, really, we appreciate that.
And on this broadcast, a lot of people are clowns, so David, don't take anything personal. I keep you very busy. But meanwhile, Lewis, any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, baseball is upon us. We have our first couple of games tomorrow. I believe Rangers play the Twins tomorrow in a spring training exhibition, so that's the first major league on major league matchup. But yeah, the smell of bats hitting ball and leather and balls hitting leather is going to start, and hot dogs and beer are going to be parading around soon in ballparks. So.
Yeah, and meanwhile, David Levin will be parading around this studio when him and I get behind the microphone like we do up in Jacksonville, but they're not having Jacksonville jumbo shrimp. We'll probably find other places to go out to eat. David, any final thoughts before we close it down?
I'm just excited that Donnie Baseball's back in Miami. To me, that's one of the greatest things I can say. Growing up watching Donnie Baseball, we've talked about this. I'm a fan, and just to be able to see him still being the skipper of this team and watching the team grow, it's going to be exciting this year.
Well, I'll say this. I have a Don Mattingly Hydrostone statue at home, and I had some guy make an offer of $350, and I told him, your check won't cash because I won't be taking it. It's worth a whole lot more. So, yeah, well, I'm no kidding, but I bought it in Cooperstown. I'm proud of it. I'm glad it proudly sits in my place. So, but meanwhile, it's pretty neat. David Levin, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you on Twitter?
Yeah, guys, thanks. I'm on Twitter, DM7199907. If you want to check me out, I'm on Fansided. I cover football and baseball. And that's about it.
Lewis, you want to go ahead and give your Twitter thing a plug?
Yeah, my Twitter's actually starting to grow. I'm actually putting seeds in the ground and watering it, so it looks like it's actually starting to come out. Adio_Lewis00 is my handle. You can find me there. I talk baseball occasionally, chime in on some football, and talk about why Stephen A. Smith is a clown. But you know what? I'm a clown on this show too, so it don't really matter.
Well, the stat clown. But meanwhile, but he's our top writing clown. That's for sure. Or anybody that's better than you, I'd like to find out who that individual is.
I appreciate that.
But meanwhile, you can also check out the South Florida Tribune, www.southfloridatribune.com. If that isn't good enough, we can go sflatribune.com or sfltribune.com. You're going to get us one way or the other. But meanwhile, on behalf of Lewis Adio Waste, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and David Levin, thanking you for joining us here on the Sports Exchange. Everybody have yourself a great night, and we'll do it again. Thank you very much, and have a good night, everybody.